Hello and welcome to the Calmcast, a time to feel calm and think clearly. I'm Claire Downham, the Queen of Calm, a transformational life coach. I was a burnt out head teacher who finally made the journey to calm after years of trying, and I want to prevent you from having to do the same. The Calmcast is a series of short explorations, gently guiding you back to your natural state, which is calm and clarity. Just listen like you would listen to music, with an open mind and curiosity. There's nothing else to do. Now let's relax into today's episode. So this month's theme is relationships, because boy can they appear to create a lot of stress in our lives. I'm going to share today, so we're going to talk a little bit today about what seems to prevent relationships being calm, or what, maybe the opposite question is, what seems to create stress in relationships. And it's probably worth sharing a little bit of my history with that. So I can't really remember when it started, or when I became obsessed is probably the right word, with other people needing to be a certain way for me to be okay. But the longest relationship, or the relationship that was extremely prominent in, was my marriage, my now ex-marriage. It's not a marriage anymore. And it came out as, I'm going to call it moaning, nagging, criticizing, probably in the main, criticism of my ex-husband. Now, I'm not saying he's an angel and I was just super bad, or vice versa, but right from when we first met, I saw that my role, or I thought that my role, was to fix him. That was my job. And I'm sure some of you can relate to that. When I met my ex-husband, was I 23? I was pretty young, really. And we were both at university. And I pursued him. I wanted to be in a relationship with him. I really fancied him, I suppose you might say. But as I got to know him, as we got together, and I got to know him, I started to see where we fell into a very dysfunctional pattern, which was, I was like the mother. I felt the need to look after him. My mothering instincts, let's say that women generally have those, came out full force. So, for example, when I first met him, he wasn't being very well supported by his parents while he was at university financially, and couldn't afford to feed himself, so I often bought him food. He had no glasses, and his eyesight's worse now, from what I understand from my children, but his eyesight was poor then, and he had no glasses. His glasses are broken and he hadn't got them fixed. So I got all that sort. So right from literally the early weeks of our relationship, I started looking after him. And I think the rot then was that I taught him to be helpless, really. And I know that because when he moved out of this house, he seems to still be alive. He survived. He's not dead. So he's obviously managed to look after himself in some kind of way. You know, he's got his own house next door. If you want to ask me about that, feel free. So he seems to be all right. What the kids say, he's all right. He's managing. You know, he's not been, the bailiffs haven't been round, and you know, his house hasn't blown up. Which would be inconvenient because it is attached to my house. So this started. This is how it started, and so for me it looked like, and I wouldn't have been able to articulate it like this back then, because I didn't understand what I understand now about how things work, and how we function as human beings and how our mind works. But I wanted him to be different, with the premise that I would be okay once he was different. But what then happens is once we've got a belief about somebody as incompetent or not good at looking after themselves, then confirmation bias, which I've spoken about a few times on these sessions, it comes into play. And so increasingly, that person seems to be incompetent or not able to look after themselves. And so what happened to me over time was that I used to give him things to do. Can you please take ownership of this aspect of the house or whatever? And then he wouldn't do those things. And then I would take control of them because that was the only way I thought I could be okay. Because for me, on the other side of not doing these particular tasks I gave him was doom and destruction, you know. So I mean, one year we were 3 months without buildings and contents insurance because he told me he'd done it and he hadn't done it. So this monitoring, supervising, and controlling came into play to be a massive part. Now, that's my example of how it really looked to me like another person had to be a certain way for me to be okay, and I suspect you've got your own examples, and it doesn't really matter what the behavior is, it doesn't really matter what the person's doing or how they are. If it looks like they need to be different for us to have peace of mind, for us to be calm, and for us to have a nice experience of life, then we're looking in the wrong direction. We're looking in the wrong direction. That is not where your calm is. It isn't other people, and it doesn't come from other people. So the next phase of this for me was online dating. I mean, that's probably the only time in my life I've had really severe anxiety. We all experience anxiety; it's part of being human. But that period I had dire anxiety because I was a total control freak, trying to make sure that men who I met online behaved in a particular way, and if they didn't, that seemed to have an impact on my self-esteem, how I felt about myself, etc., etc., and that was extremely exhausting. But yet again, it was other people need to behave themselves and behave in a particular way for me to be okay. And there's loads of other places. I mean, you ask my fiance, it's still there. I'm a bit nitpicky. I'm a bit critical. And I mean, if you meet my mum, you kind of know where I've learned it from. It's all learned behavior, isn't it? That's where it all comes from. It's all learned. So if we are looking for other people to be different for us to be okay, we are looking in the wrong direction, and confirmation bias then comes into play and creates an illusion of that other person that looks to be true, looks to be that's how they are, I need them to be like this, and then the focus is on trying to change them. And I would say to anybody now, if you're going into any relationship, whatever relationship it is, if it's a business partner or a client or a partnership of any description with another human being, and you would like them to be different for you to be okay, then that is not a good place to stop. So what prevents relationships being calm is us thinking that relationships are supposed to make us calm, that are supposed to make us happy, that they're supposed to be a certain way for us to be okay. And it doesn't matter, as I say, whether you're talking about your love partnership, your relationship with somebody in business, a client or a partner or whatever, or your children. I mean, I see this so much in parents all the time, and me too, where you see it in the supermarket. I mean, the reason somebody gives in to their child and gives them what they want when they're screaming in the supermarket is to do with them. It's not to do with the child, really. It's like, I feel uncomfortable because my child's screaming. I need my child to be okay so I can be okay. That's what's happening there. That's what's really going on. It isn't really that that it's about the child. It's never about the other person. I get messages all the time from people saying, oh, how do I teach my family and friends this understanding? Well, you teach it if they're interested. It's not a means to get somebody else to see something about their life so they'll change so you can feel better. That's not the point. It's always about looking inside, not outside. And that's what takes the calm out of relationships. That's what makes relationships look really stressful, is because we're trying to make somebody else be different to how they are for us to be okay. And that is a hiding to nothing. You're never going to win that battle, ever. So this month, I'm going to explore relationships really deeply. And bearing in mind, last month we explored confidence, and the conclusion was that confidence doesn't really exist. How cool was that? Like this month, let's see what happens. Maybe relationships don't exist. In fact, I have heard that said, but maybe I'll explore that in another session. I'm going to leave you hanging. So, as I said right at the beginning, relationships can seem to be a huge source of stress. So if for you they are, if for you they seem to be causing an issue, then please do reach out and connect with me, and let's explore how I can help you with that. Because it does make a huge... I'm very lucky now that I have a wonderful relationship with a wonderful man who has, through his own choice, decided to learn about the 3 principles and gradually non-duality and just how life works for human beings, how the mind works. He's engaged with that, and that's helped both of us, I would say, to relate to each other differently, because we're not really caught up as much in that idea that either of us need to be a particular way for the other one to be okay. So we rub along with much more ease, really, than we did even in the early part of our relationship. So I am very grateful. But those calm relationships, those joyful, wonderful relationships that really is what we all would like, are available by you learning this for yourself. I've seen some of my most difficult relationships. Well, one of my difficult relationships has really, really transformed just to be not a problem. The person concerned is still often doing their interesting and strange things, and things that I don't think are okay. But Bruce and I are just a lot less bothered by them than we were. We still have our moments because we're human, but we're a lot less bothered. So I'm going to have fun exploring this. And what I'd love to hear from you, if you have got time to drop me a message, is what would you like to see differently about your relationships? What would be helpful for you? What would you really like to... So pop that in the comments, or just reach out to me and send me an email or whatever, and I'll try and put that into the sessions and we'll see what emerges. So take care. Lots of love.
Thank you so much for listening. There's nothing to do now but bring some awareness to how this is working out in your life. Listen regularly to experience longer and longer periods of calm. This has been the Calmcast with Claire Downham, Queen of Calm. Take care and keep listening.